Hi everyone, thanks for joining my first webinar. Would you believe that they've started to dig up the roads outside since I started to get myself prepared? Never mind. Okay, so the shadow and relationships. Okay, so your intimate relationships will show your shadow more than any other aspect of your life. And so if you're having problems in your relationships, it's because there is also usually a problem within you as well. Because the outside world reflects the inner world most of the time. That's not to say that you are responsible for everything that's happening. But you have some collusion in this relationship. If you're in a relationship with someone and it's not working out the way you want it to, you are also participating. And so you have to think about what it is within you that's also kind of creating some of this situation. And this is a way that you become more accountable for your situation. It's a more mature way to go about being in a relationship rather than just pointing the finger. If you're in a relationship with someone who's constantly making you feel bad, or is disrespecting you, or who is disappointing you very often, then you also have to think about, this person is behaving in such a way. People behave the way they want to behave. And so if you've already kind of drawn their attention to it and the fact that you don't like it, then you have to think to yourself, okay, so why am I still participating in this relationship? And I'm not telling you to go and end your relationship. That's not what I'm doing at all. Okay, but I just want to kind of draw a different perspective on it. Okay, so in terms of your shadow is your unconscious, denied, repressed aspects of yourself. Some parts that you know, some parts that you don't know. Most of your shadow is your is kind of based around your traumas, your complexes, and your fears. Okay, so and also your social and cultural conditioning. So there's a lot of work to be done around understanding why you are the way you are, why you've attracted the person that you have attracted. What are your recurring problems in your relationships? What do you see as a pattern? Because all of these things will point towards your shadow. And the other thing to know about your shadow is that your shadow shows itself in the state of your relationships. It shows itself in your more negative personality traits. So let's just say your unexpected outbursts of rage will definitely show your shadow. Your jealousy, your bitterness, your anger, your sort of gossiping, all of these things that these parts of ourselves that we don't particularly like, when they come up in our lives, we can look back at ourselves and say, okay, so what is that related to? Any sort of shadow aspect is always related to trauma, complex, or fear. And so to understand what those are, understand the roots of why you have that shadow sort of showing itself in that way, is to also understand the roots of the pain or the hurt or the unmet need that happened that made you kind of become that way in many ways. And so and that's a good way to understand it. And it's also a good way for you to develop some kind of self-love, because ultimately, anything to do with the shadow, when the shadow is very, very prevalent, for most people, it's prevalent in people who are unconscious of who they are and why they do the things they do. But wherever it's prevalent, there's an opportunity for us to understand who we are and to develop some kind of self-empathy and self-love, which is something that most people don't have. Most people just fucking hate themselves, to be honest, when it comes down to it. When it boils down to it, there is this self-loathing that I just think at the moment society is just like riddled with this disease of self-loathing. And it comes from many different things. It comes from the parenting that we experienced. It comes from our social cultural conditioning, the fears, and the complexes, as I've said already. But it's something that we all have an opportunity to change and to work on. And working on it is sort of based on self-knowledge, and it's also kind of steeped in understanding the truth of who we are. I mean, shadow work really at the end of the day is about understanding the truth of who we are. who we are, why we are the way we are, but also not just the truth of ourselves. You can't take the fish out of the water. You have to understand the world we live in, the truth of the world that we live in. And so this is a very, very difficult thing for a lot of people to get their head around. A lot of people, they want to understand more about themselves so that they can feel better. But actually, shadow work doesn't often really make you feel better, especially initially when you're first doing it. And that's why a lot of people don't want to do it, because it means admitting the times that you may have been wrong. And it means admitting, going by looking at all of your previously firmly held beliefs and challenging some of those sometimes. And that can be very difficult for a lot of people. So, okay, getting back to relationships. Right, so first of all, in terms of attraction, we tend to attract the kind of people that some people say that we need to find in order so that we can recreate the situation that we found that we experienced in childhood, so that we can overcome it. And I believe that to be true in some way. We definitely do. In my experience, there has been many times where people in relationships, especially in the troubled relationships, they usually reflect something of what they've seen in childhood. Okay. And it only comes to that point where they actually really kind of do the work on themselves, and they really kind of grow as a person, and they know who they are, and they know what they're looking for, and they know what to go for in terms of looking for people who are going to actually be good for them, and wanting good for themselves. Because a lot of the time people look for relationships with an empty cup. They're looking for someone to fulfill them, someone to make them feel better, someone to in a way, it's almost like they just want to ignore themselves. They just want to kind of focus their attention on that person externally, where and just leave themselves by the wayside. But this is also part of the problem that I see in the world at the moment, is that there's so much of this kind of self-rejection, and there are so many distractions. I mean, social media on its own is a terrible distraction, and actually, really, I mean, this is a completely different topic of. Not completely, but quite a different topic. But I think that social media plays a big part in why people can't stay in relationships anymore, because there's always the next person. There's always someone kind of, there's always this kind of online sort of flirting kind of thing going on. And, we have to be really careful about how we present ourselves on social media and how we interact with people. Whether you're single or not, I think it's really important to kind of keep some kind of some sort of barrier. And I know I definitely do it, because I'm kind of careful that I know I've had a few sort of anima projections upon me. And so I'm very sort of careful about how I interact with people. And I think people should be, especially if they're in relationships. Anyway, that's a different topic. Expectations and boundaries. Yeah, so to understand what your expectations and your boundaries are, and very often people do need to kind of cultivate something of the masculine, and that includes kind of building up these boundaries. And so the other point to make is about the inner anima and animus. So for women, it's the inner masculine that they need to kind of develop in order to to be their own backbone, and to draw enough boundaries, and to go into things with some kind of level-headed reasoning, which is a traditionally an archetypally masculine role. And yeah, so it's masculine role. And then also the other thing for women that I found that they need to do now for a lot of women is to reclaim their feminine as well. Because at the moment in our society, women are having to kind of take on so many different roles. There are lots of kind of single mums who have to be mother and father to the children, and having to kind of work full time so that they can afford the things that they need, or even just to have a roof over their head a lot of the time. And so they have to do that, but they also have to be mothers, and then they have to put their children in childcare, and so that kind of bond between mother and child is kind of broken, or at least separated for a time. So that there are lots of different ways that I feel that that people are being kind of what's the word? Taken off course, let's just say, and distracted from their natural their nat what do I say, their natural instincts. I'm very much about the sort of the traditional and archetypal masculine and feminine roles as the foundation of a woman and a man. And so for me, it would be that as a woman, my central focus is that I am, that I have reclaimed my feminine, and I had to reclaim it because when I started doing the work on the animus, and I started to kind of think about the more sort of positive masculine traits that I needed to develop within myself, I then realized, I looked around, I was like, where the fuck is my feminine? So it was really an important part of my journey, and part of what that includes is first of all, recognizing the difference between men and women. They're first of all biologically, but also I think spiritually, and I know also psychologically. There've been books written since what's it called again? Analytic psychology started. About the psychology of men and women, and so to say that men and women are all the same is just so wrong. It's an absolute violation, actually. And it's cutting people off at their very roots of who they are, in terms of their identity. And I know that now I seem like this old bag who's just banging on about something that they used to talk about in the 90s or the fucking 70s or 80s. But it's actually true. And to be honest, luckily it hasn't actually hit home for most people, this idea that men and women are exactly the same. We're absolutely not. It's not true. And actually women, although we have our own strengths and weaknesses, and so do men. But one of our biggest strengths that we have is that we bring life into the world. It's the biggest thing, it's the most important thing in the world. What could be more important than bringing more life? That's what we're designed for. That's what everyone, men and women are both designed for creating life. If nothing else, that's the major point of us is that we can create life. And what fucking magic is it? What magic can we make by making a life in our body and giving birth? It's just the most incredible thing. And to pretend that it's not important is very, very dangerous. I think it's a very, very dangerous. Anyway, I've gone off course again. Okay, so the point I was trying to make is about finding the balance between our inner masculine and feminine. Very, very important. I have a workbook called the Anima and Animus Integration, which is very important, which I think is a very important document, which can really help with your inner healing. And to be honest, it goes alongside my shadow work journal and workbook, which is also very important, I think is the first stage. Because Carl Jung does say that so the recognition of the unconscious and the shadow is the first stage of the sort of analytic process. And the masterpiece is the integration of the anima and animus. And the integration can't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. But my workbook can be there as a guide, And I think actually, even if you just work through the workbook, once you've done it, some of that information will stay with you for years to come. And there's a lot. It's very, very heavy in terms of quotes that from Carl Jung mainly, and other Jungians, but mainly Carl Jung. So yeah, it's very it's good. It's good. If you want to have a look at it, you can go onto my profile, and I think there's a link up there for New Zealand. So okay, so yeah, so the world outside reflects the world inside. So basically, if you're having problems in your relationships, you know that there's a problem also within you. And it's either that you're putting up with too much bullshit because there is some shadow aspect that perhaps you might have seen this behavior in the past, that it's familiar to you, that you are, unconsciously you are creating the same situation so that you can move through it and you can move past it, and so that you can master yourself. Because ultimately, we come here to grow. And I think as we come here to grow, in terms of our, on the plane of matter, in this world, we also grow spiritually as well. There is some kind of spiritual evolution within that. I've been watching a lot of stuff, I've said this before, but I've been watching a lot of stuff about near-death experiences, and everyone has said the same. They all say that they had a life review. And this is really important. And also Carl Jung also talked about this as well. He said that he had, when he died before he died, and And in his experience, he went up, and it's in the book Memories, Dreams, Reflections, which is a great book. If you've not read any Jung, that's the first book you should read, I think, or Man and His Symbols. He said that he had a life review. They were asking about what he got right and what he got wrong. He did a lot right. He obviously made a lot of mistakes as well. So yeah, so this is, for me, this is kind of almost like confirmation. It's not just him, it's other people as well saying the same thing, that we come here to learn, to grow. Think of it as a school. Yeah, a school. Uh, the thing about, I'll just say this last thing, okay, about shadow work. So the point of shadow work is to find the truth, the truth of what is unconsciously guiding your actions, thoughts, perceptions, your life experiences, your behavior. And so it's the most, I think it's one of the most important things you can do. And I think that when you understand enough about yourself, and you learn to love who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you are in a better position then to really follow your calling, whatever your calling may be. Now, when I first started this work many years ago, 2014, I did a course in Jungian psychology with art therapy, and it was kind of, I guess, the start of something. I remember I made a lot of art, and I was sitting there in the kitchen one day, and I was looking at all this artwork, thinking, there's a lot there. So, and I'd always wanted to be an artist when I was a kid, and so I was looking at this art, so I said, okay, I just knew, like a bolt of lightning, I knew that that artwork needed to be shown, because it shows my shadow work in picture form, and I knew that that somehow that work was going to influence what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and I didn't know how. I had no idea. I didn't think, but one thing I did think when I was doing the course in Jungian psychology, I thought to myself, they should really make this course online, because more people should be able to access it, because it is a life changer. And then I've now created my own. So my first online live course is going to be starting on the 9th of March. So if you are interested in changing your life and understanding what is unconsciously guiding you and your life experiences, then you should join me. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there, and thanks everyone for joining me. Take care.